Welcome back. Exclusive coverage from Suzuka as the cars make their way out now for the warm-up lap. Jonesy, it's interesting, you know, in the history of both of these teams, Ferrari have won 125 Grand Prix, been around a lot longer, of course. McLaren with a very impressive 122. And the other interesting thing is the championship numbers. They're both sitting on 8.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's quite incredible, but you've also got to take into account that McLaren haven't been around quite as long as Ferrari. I mean, Ferrari were, you know, sort of racing in Grand Prix before Ron Dennis was born, I think.
Irvine knows this track well, led Schumacher a couple of years ago with a very impressive drive. He's raced here a lot, but had a big off in practice, as you saw.
Yeah, he did. I mean, he raced in the Formula 3000 Japanese Championship for a couple of years, and he never really went all that well at this circuit, but he always said that he didn't have the proper tyres because it's well suited to Bridgestones, and he always, I think he was on another make of tyre, but that's what he always used to use as an excuse. But in terms of results, he hasn't had a great deal of success here.
Well, when you look, Schumacher's on pole, then the two McLarens, Irvine back, Frentzen could be the dark horse.
Well, Frentzen drove a blistering race at Malaysia. I mean, considering where he started, he went off the track on the second lap of his qualifying when he had the qualifying car and qualifying engine, and considering where he had to start, he drove a great race at Malaysia. He's obviously qualified a lot further up for this race, and as I've been saying all week, he could very well be a dark horse. He does have a Honda sitting behind him. Honda own this circuit, so he's probably enjoying a few more horsepower than normal.
Looking down the track, it's a magnificent racetrack, this one, and really is a driver's circuit. The weather conditions are great. All right, let's buckle up and see. We've been all around the world right through the year, and this is the decider to see who is going to be the 1999 world champion. Let's cross now to Murray Walker and Martin Brundle.
Murray shouting, go, go, go. If there's any relative movement, you have made a jump start, and clearly it's easier to do here in Suzuka than almost anywhere else.
Because of that fact. So here is Michael Schumacher into the notorious chicane, which is where Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost collided in 1989 to decide that year's World Championship to the advantage of Alain Prost, although Senna had won the race only to be excluded. There's been so much drama at Suzuka here over the years.
It's a long braking zone into that last chicane. They call it the triangle for some peculiar reason. Here's the official name of it, but it is tempting to have a go, but it very often ends in tears, and we even saw in qualifying, didn't we, Lacey getting completely out of shape and spoiling Häkkinen's final attempt to get on pole position.
So remember Ferrari's plan. Their plan is for Michael Schumacher to win this race and for Eddie Irvine to finish 4th or higher, thus guaranteeing them both the championships. It's Mika Häkkinen's job there to stop that happening. If he wins the race, he wins the championship. There in the background is Eddie Irvine. If he wins the race, he wins the championship, but he can win it other ways as well. We're now with Heinz-Harald Frentzen, 4th on the grid with Mika Häkkinen in front of him.
Yes, you saw Frentzen just plucking it into first gear, the car jumping a little bit. You've also got to keep your foot on the brakes for that too. Irvine looked calm, curiously looking in his mirrors, and his visor still up, very calm approaching the start.
3rd light, 4th light, 5th light. Action! And Michael Schumacher darts across, but Mika Häkkinen gets ahead of him.
Yes.
Mika Häkkinen, a marvellous start, and he's streaking away already. This is exactly what the Finn wanted, exactly what Michael Schumacher didn't want, and there's a Prost up into 3rd position. This has blown the whole thing wide open right at the start.
Unbelievable start from Häkkinen, a very poor start from Michael Schumacher, but also significantly Eddie Irvine is ahead of Coulthard and Frentzen. So a key start, and clearly I think Michael moving right across the track held that side of the road up, and really we've got an unusual running order now coming through this first lap.
But that Prost getting ahead, and I reckon it's Olivier Panis. He was 6th on the grid, and his teammate Jarno Trulli was 7th. Was a terrific start by him. Now, he could well be holding people up behind him. Yet there's Eddie Irvine behind the Prost. So it's Häkkinen leading, Schumacher 2nd, Panis in 3rd position, and Eddie Irvine, as Martin Brundle has pointed out, has done what he wanted to do, got ahead of David Coulthard, and then it is behind Coulthard. I'm just looking for the yellow car, and it is Heinz-Harald Frentzen Frentzen as out of the race goes Alex Zanardi, the first retirement in the Williams. What a dreadful season it's been for the Italian.
Yes, that pretty much sums up Zanardi's return to Formula One for Williams. And you've got to feel sorry for him. It hasn't been a good year. A little bit of a shining light in the Italian Grand Prix, but it's been an appalling season otherwise. Meanwhile, it's looking good so far for Mika Häkkinen, and he appears to have the pace, but we know Michael Schumacher is very, very strong around this racetrack. But then Häkkinen won this race last year to take the championship. He knows he can do it again.
Yeah, and he was faster than Michael Schumacher in the warm-up. Not that that necessarily means anything, but Ralf Schumacher is in 7th position. He's closed up from 9th position on the grid. Well, Mika Häkkinen looking very good. Early days, of course. This is lap 2 out of 53. Martin.
Now let's see how it goes. Look at Häkkinen, just got the perfect getaway, and a poor getaway from Coulthard. Irvine switching positions, and that allowed Panis to get through too. So it was Coulthard and Schumacher with the poor getaways, and the rest of them just scampering down the racetrack, and Frentzen really getting quite badly balked.
Yeah, and did you see how Olivier Panis started up into 3rd position? Great start by the Frenchman. I remind you, this is his last try for Prost. He certainly wants to do well here, and he is doing well. He's still in 3rd position, and the gap between him and Michael Schumacher in 2nd place is increasing, and Eddie Irvine looking for a way past the Prost to make it Ferrari 2nd and 3rd as they go into the spoon on this, the 2nd lap.
Well, let's look at this. Irvine 4.2 seconds behind Häkkinen, his contender for the title at the end of the 1st lap.
Yeah, and if Mika Häkkinen wins this race as he won it last year, he would become world champion as he did last year. And Michael Schumacher is already the only man who seems as though he could do anything about it. This is a complete turn-up for the book, particularly because of Panis. So, coming through to complete the 2nd lap. Now, the gap between Häkkinen and Schumacher at the end of the 1st lap was 9/10 of a second. Häkkinen's just put up the fastest lap, and it's 1.3 seconds. He's pulling away, and he's 6 seconds ahead of Eddie Irvine, and 6.5 ahead of Coulthard there, who's in 5th position, followed by Frentzen, followed by Ralf Schumacher that we're looking at now, 7th position.
A lovely picture there of Ralf Schumacher's brakes at 700 degrees as he's heading down into turn 1, closely followed by turn 2. Meanwhile, back into Dunlop curves with race leader Häkkinen, still pulling away another 0.3 of a second faster on the 1st section of this lap. So Häkkinen has very much got the bit between his teeth. But early days, 53 laps around here is a long way. And remember how exhausted Häkkinen looked on the podium.
Let's try a flyer on you, Martin. We haven't said anything about strategies. It could be, hypothetically, that Mika Häkkinen is on a 2-stop strategy, as a result of which he would have a lighter fuel load than Michael Schumacher if the Ferrari was on a 1-stop strategy, which I very much doubt.
Well, we've seen a tendency lately for them to overfuel the car on the start line to give themselves a much greater window of opportunity later on to choose the moment for a pit stop. And I believe virtually all of these cars are able to change their strategies in the middle, all the key cars that is, if they have to in the middle of the race. I would have thought 2-stop would be ideal in terms of tyre degradation, which is quite high. I'm sure James has already taken you through that. And in terms of fuel loads, a long lap with a lot of corners. But I don't believe there'll be a great fuel difference between those 2 cars right now.
Well, I say it's early days, but if they stayed where they are now, Mika Häkkinen would score 76 points at the end of this race, and Eddie Irvine would score 73. So we'll have to wait and see. There is Eddie Irvine with David Coulthard in the 2nd McLaren in his wheel tracks as they round turn 1. Now they start to climb here. Turn 3, the left-hander goes into the sweeping. Turn 4, right. Turn 5, left. Up to turn 6, right again, and then into the seemingly never-ending turn 7, the Dunlop turn, which they take at about 135 miles an hour. They are there now, on to Degner, the double right-hander, which leads to the crossover, where the circuit here dives under the circuit. There it is, with the 130R above.
Yes, Coulthard just dropping back slightly from Irvine. He was 0.2 of a second slower on the previous lap, and he's really got to get ahead of that red Ferrari if he's going to do his job this afternoon for McLaren and Mika Häkkinen's championship. But right now, of course, the way it stands at the moment, Ferrari looking strong in the Constructors' Championship. Indeed. As they're running at this present time, but still, I repeat, 50 laps to go.
Yeah, and just let's look at the situation between David Coulthard, who currently is 4th in the World Championship, and Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who is 3rd with 3 points between them. And there is Eddie Irvine, there is Coulthard with Frentzen behind him. So it's nip and tuck between those two as far as that position in the championship is concerned. But I say again, as Martin has said, long way to go.
Well, I know that David has completely given up his concerns about trying to beat Frentzen this afternoon. He really has only got to play the team game and try to get both championships for McLaren. And I know he will drive for that and not thinking at all. And if he gets half a chance, had he been in front of Irvine, I'm sure he would have let Frentzen go to try to get further down the road. They've somehow got to shuffle Irvine into 5th position or worse, so that even if Michael does win the race, Häkkinen still gets the title.
There's a retirement.
That's Trulli, isn't it?
It's, yeah, it's Jarno Trulli. And that ends his career with Prost, and I think, frankly, he'll be pretty pleased about it. He hasn't been in the best of humours here at Suzuka. He had a spat with Alain Prost after the Malaysian Grand Prix, and he'll be looking forward to racing for Jordan next season. But this is this season. There is race leader Mika Häkkinen on lap 5, just at under 1/10 distance already in Suzuka. And word from James Allen at McLaren.
Murray, you guys are talking about how McLaren will get DC ahead of Eddie Irvine. Well, I've got a hunch that DC's got David Coulthard's got a fair bit of fuel on board that car, possibly one of the reasons why he didn't get away very well at the start. And he's likely to stop the same time as Irvine, and of course he'll make a shorter stop because he's already got more fuel on board, and that way, as long as he shadows him, he's not too far behind him before the stops, they can get him back out in front of Irvine and then try and shepherd Irvine's pace. Now, Panis must be on light fuel to be living with these guys at the moment, so I expect him to come in first. It could be very interesting at that point.
Yes, you're absolutely right, but the key thing you said is that Coulthard must shadow Irvine. He's somehow got to stay certainly within half a second of him, as Häkkinen takes a further 0.8 of a second out of Michael Schumacher and extends his lead to 3.3 seconds. Panis a further is a fully 9.7 seconds down the road, as you can see for yourself. And there is the scrap that counts for Eddie Irvine.
Mika Häkkinen's been saying it will be the first one to crack. And I thought it might be Mika Häkkinen, I have to say, but it certainly doesn't look like it. The thin as he showed last year, he's a very, very gritty chap. He's taken his opportunity with both hands. He did it last year. He's leading on lap 6 now by over 3 seconds from Michael Schumacher, and he's pulled away from him, as Martin just said, something like 0.7 of a second.
Well, Eddie Irvine's fate is in the lap of the gods at the moment, because he's lapping a full 2 seconds a lap slower in clear air than Mika Häkkinen, and 1.5 seconds, which he's consistently been all weekend, slower than Michael. So now Eddie's just got to keep it on the road, not make any mistakes, and see how it settles out. He does not have the pace to affect his result in this race. All he can do is just keep driving.
No, if Eddie Irvine does win this championship, it is going to be by courtesy of Michael Schumacher, and I say that with no rancour at all. So, when are they going to start coming in? Well, 2-stop strategies should start round about lap 18 and then again on lap 32. So that means another 12 laps to go. We're on lap 6 now. Mika Häkkinen leading by about 3.5 seconds from Michael Schumacher, who is 6 seconds ahead of Panis, who is 2 seconds ahead of Irvine, who is half a second ahead of Coulthard, who is 1.6 seconds ahead of Heinz-Harald Frentzen. But both Coulthard 5th and Frentzen 6th are starting to close on Olivier Panis. There's a lot of action to come here as we look at the tail enders. That's Takagi followed by Badr. We're riding with the Japanese driver Tora Takagi in the arrows here. So lap 7 at Suzuka. Time to go to a break. We'll be back.
Welcome back. back. You can see Ron Dennis there looking pretty relaxed, and why not? Mika Häkkinen doing a fantastic job after 8 laps. There's the readout for you. Now, Jonesy, both of these teams have been superb in the pits over the last few years, but there'll have to be a fair bit of juggling now, and there'll be a lot of brains working to try and work out how they can get some track time in the pits.
I think Adrian Newey and Ross Brawn will be working overtime now. I think just working out their strategies. It really is a major moving game of chess. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it unfolds in terms of who's carrying what fuel load.
Are you surprised Häkkinen's this quick?
No.
Let's go back to Murray.
Yes, and I'd expect him to pull away a little bit more as they move into this stint.
Now, they're all on the Bridgestone soft compound. Bridgestone brought a harder, they brought the medium compound as well, but all the teams opted for the softer one, despite the fact that on Friday there was a lot of degradation. And by degradation, I don't mean that the tyres were falling apart, I just mean that the performance was falling away. In fact, they only lasted about 1 lap at peak performance. You're looking now, incidentally, at Eddie Irvine in 4th position, with David Coulthard behind him. There is Olivier Panis still holding that 3rd place. In the background is Heinz-Harald Frentzen in 6th position. Now, you remember James Allen said he had no doubt that Panis was on a 2-stop strategy and therefore a lighter fuel load. We'll wait and see. Now, down in the pits is Louise Goodman. She has news for us.
Yeah, just a quick word on what's been going on down at the Williams team. Alex and I did the first retirement. That was an electrical problem. Now, that means it's all down to Ralf Schumacher. He has got to finish on the podium in order to oust the Stewart team from that 4th in the Constructors' Championship. If he finishes 4th, they'll be equal on points, but of course Stewart will take the position because of that win at the Nürburgring. There's a long way to go still, but I think he's really going to have his work cut out to get onto the podium today. One other retirement, truly that was an engine problem.
Just to tell you about the Brits, Johnny Herbert down in 9th place, lapping in the 1:43. Damon Hill down in 13th, somewhat off the pace in the 1:44.6. That's 2.5 seconds off the leader's pace, so Damon not having a particularly blistering final Grand Prix.
And here are the top 10 on lap 10 out of 53. Mika Häkkinen continuing to pull away from Michael Schumacher. It's surprising me the way that's happening, but he's driving absolutely brilliantly. 5.5 seconds. Panis is 16.5 seconds, 3rd place behind the McLaren. Eddie Irvine is still in 4th place. Ferrari's 1st, 2nd and 3rd. McLaren's 1st and 5th because David Coulthard is 5th. Heinz-Harald Frentzen in 6th position. Seemingly, at this difficult-to-pass circuit, could do nothing about Coulthard in front of him and Irvine. And in 7th position, Ralf Schumacher. 8th is Alesi. 9th is Johnny Herbert. 10th is Villeneuve. We've just got those 2 retirements, Zanardi and Trulli. 20 drivers are still running, and we're now on lap 11.
Yes, Panis, of course, 6th on the grid, teammates 7th, so no fluke there. They clearly found a very good setup. We didn't see anything of that Friday and Saturday morning, but in Saturday afternoon qualifying, the Prost were genuinely flying. We saw his electric start down the right-hand side into the first corner, and the pace of the people behind him now dropping back into the 44s, which is very slow, I have to say. I think that Prost is more than capable of keeping with, so that's why you're seeing Panis in a strong 3rd position.
Now, some people may be wondering about the reliability of the McLarens. I must say they have been very reliable here. They've only had one major problem, and that was when David Coulthard went off in a big way. Nothing to do with the car, and he was perfectly all right. But Coulthard's retired 6 times this year. Häkkinen's retired 5 times this year. Häkkinen, of course, has had 3 offs through problems of his driving at Imola and Hockenheim and Monza, although Hockenheim, of course, was the tyre which delaminated in the biggest possible way and flung him off the circuit. There he is, lap 11. Nearly 6 seconds. Now look back for Michael Schumacher. There he is. That's how far the Ferrari is behind the McLaren. It's looking very much like a McLaren race here at Suzuka.
Yes, Michael just beginning to peg Mika a little bit. He's now beginning to lose 3 to 4 tenths a lap rather than the 5 to 6 tenths before. And if Mika can, 53 lap race, if he can make obviously a half a second per lap, whatever Michael's pit strategy, Mika will then have a pit stop in his pocket and a good shot at winning this race and therefore this World Championship. So Mika needs, if he can, to keep that half-second a lap advantage up, and then he's got Michael covered every which way.
And according to my mental calculations while Martin's been talking, there's just 1 point in it at the present moment between Ferrari and McLaren, to Ferrari's advantage. Mika Häkkinen, of course, is on those 10 points, and I've said before, the difference between 10 points for first place and 6 points for second place is the biggest step of all.
And Michael Schumacher wants Ferrari to win this Constructors' title. You're looking at Irvine and Coulthard. Coulthard hanging on. He is 0.5 behind, according to the computer here. It's varying through the lap. Irvine is faster through section 1. Coulthard's faster through 2, and they're equal through 3. So that's why they're lapping pretty much together. But I would imagine, and that's a move for Fisichella on Takagi. I don't know what Fisichella's doing back there. He must have had a spin or something. Well, so he went off the track apparently twice by the looks of it, at turn 8 and turn 13. So Fisichella back down. But in my view, Michael would want Ferrari to take the Constructors' title, take some pressure off of his team, and hope to go and win the Drivers' title next year for them. I don't think he particularly cares whether Eddie wins the Drivers or not, personally, as much as he helped him out in Malaysia. He did his job. He can be proud of that. Now he's going to try and want to win this race for Ferrari and the Constructors. And I don't think Michael will do anything other than drive flat out, because you guys saw him through on the previous lap. He really is giving it everything. Häkkinen has got the greater pace at this stage of the race.
He has indeed, and Michael giving it everything is not nearly enough. He's 6.6 seconds now as we look at Pennis crossing the line. 21 seconds behind Häkkinen, and just 3 seconds ahead of this battle. Eddie Irvine 4th. David Coulthard tucked up behind the Ferrari, and you remember what we were saying about fuel and stops for those two cars, which might give David Coulthard the opportunity to get ahead of the Ferrari. Frentzen still there, followed by Ralf Schumacher 7th.
Yes, I can well see Coulthard's car carrying a lot of fuel. He's definitely now picking up his pace. That may give him 5 or 6 laps of sprinting while Irvine comes in for a quick fill-up. This looks like a good time to go for a quick break.
Welcome back. Nice to have your company right around Australia. The positions at the moment are pretty static, but Jonesy, in about 3 or 4 laps, they'll start to come in. Now, we've seen a lot of races change over this year once the pit stops start to happen.
Oh, exactly. That's what I was saying. You know, we've seen it just when the race looks like it's a little bit boring and processional. We've seen them come in to make the first of their pit stop, and it really does jump it back into life, and I certainly hope this is going to be the case today.
Just a message for all the people trying to phone in on our competition poster. That closes this afternoon. We'll draw that at the end of this race. We're having some problems, apparently, getting the numbers through. There is a message coming across saying the competition is closed. To our knowledge, we were open till 5 o'clock. So a little bit of patience, if you don't mind. A lot of calls coming in. We'll do the best we can to sort it out, and I'll keep you informed. Back to Murray.
It's unfolding.
Well, we're on lap 15 at the present moment with Mika Häkkinen leading the race. If he finishes where he is now, he will score 76 World Championship points. If Eddie Irvine, who is currently in 4th position, finishes where he is, he will score 73 World Championship points. So, Mika Häkkinen, and off goes Damon Hill. Now, he manages to keep the Jordan running round the side. He's gone off at the spoon, which I remember he did in the Williams several years ago, followed shortly by David Coulthard. And Damon is rightly keeping to the hard stuff outside the gravel. It was 1995 when he went off in the Williams. Then he did not get back. Now he has done so. He was in 13th place, but he's just been passed by Pedro de la Rosa, who is 17th, and Fisichella there, who is 18th. So down to 19th position goes Damon Hill, to the displeasure of a very sad Eddie Jordan sitting in the Jordan gantry. Now, just to finish the point I was making, the point is a very important one, that if Mika Häkkinen stays where he is, he's going to win the World Championship.
And Damon is pitting, I think, on this lap, so Damon coming in for a precautionary check. I wonder if he'll park it, Murray. That was effectively last place he'd slipped back to there. And we're seeing a replay of him slithering along, but I think he's still in pit lane. They look like they're changing the tyres and front wing. They can really, it's just about within the window to call this the first of 2 stops, really. So Damon, engine's still running. He, of course, now will rejoin the race and does so, keeping to the 120km/h speed limit. And now he can release that, and he will clearly be in last place now, but having that stop under his belt.
Yeah, he was lucky in a way that he did it just about the time he was likely to come in anyway. Not that that's any consolation. And poor old Eddie Jordan looks as though he's going to burst into tears. 37 laps left.
Panis pits. So third place man, Panis. James pointed out at the beginning of the race, he thought he was light on fuel. And Panis comes in at the end of lap 17. Again, just about on schedule for a 2-stopper. So Panis from third place. And Irvine and Coulthard and Frentzen and Schumacher all going through. Ralph, that is.
Yeah, so Olivier Panis down in the places as he gets out after 6.8 seconds. So that's a short stop. That's lap 17 he's come in. Out goes the Frenchman, and he rejoins in 12th position.
Do you think that's ahead of Barrichello or ahead of Herbert that he just went through there?
I think he's ahead of Barrichello.
But anyway, a great stop there. 6.8 is a great stop in anybody's book. So that really keeps Panis online for a top 6 position.
And it makes things a bit better for Eddie Irvine, of course, because he's now behind. And there is the McLaren as coming towards us goes Irvine and Coulthard. And James Allen has got news from the McLaren garage.
Yes, absolute consternation here, because one of the cameramen for the digital just picked up one of the McLaren mechanics with a piece of paper on it for Mika Häkkinen's fuel rig with 60 kilos on it. Now, of course, those are the pictures that are seen all the way up and down the pit lane. Ron Dennis is having kittens on the pit wall because now the rest of the teams know what fuel they were thinking of putting Häkkinen on at the next stop. Amazing.
Well, yeah, there'll be some calculations there. Ferrari are just as good as looking at television monitors as the rest of us are, and their technicians will be working things out and knowing exactly what's going to be happening to Mika Häkkinen, who we're looking at now on lap 18 out of 53, leading now by over 8 seconds.
Well, that information could well be along the lines of always covering your barge boards up to put your opponents off the trail a little bit. So we'll have to wait and see what that really means later on. It'd be unusual for McLaren to mistakenly release that kind of information, as we're now seeing on a standard 2-stopper, really. Lap 18, Herbert's in the pits, Villeneuve's in the pits. Yes, they're running together. So a close call there. Who can get out first? A decent stop there, but Johnny's away, as you saw for yourself.
And hammering down the pit lane behind them comes Alex Wurz. They rejoin in front of the Benetton. The reason the Benettons are going so badly, and they are going badly, is that they've been having the most appalling grip problems as they've had at most circuits this year. In comes De La Rosa from 15th.
Well, while we're watching all of this, Michael Schumacher has lost 9/10 of a second on both of the last 2 laps. So Michael now 8.3 seconds down on Mika, and they're on lap 18.
But he's still lapping quite a lot faster than Eddie Irvine, who's now in 3rd position. Ferrari looking very good for the Constructors' Championship, but I say we're on lap 19. It's a 53-lap race. Out goes Pedro de la Rosa.
Yes, and you obviously saw them there with the fuel hose wouldn't release, pulling away on it, and that's why it was a 16-second stop.
Damon back in the race, 20th and last. 2 retirements, Zanardi first and Trulli second. That's in the Williams and the Prost cars, respectively. Lap 19, as you watch now. Michael Schumacher second, 8 seconds behind Mika Häkkinen, lapping a few hundredths of a second faster on the previous lap. Made no real difference. Eddie Irvine 3rd. David Coulthard up into 4th position. Frentzen to 5th. Ralf Schumacher now in the points for Williams in 6th position as a result of that pit stop by Olivier Panis.
Yes, Michael matched Mika last time around, I think, because Mika, being 8 seconds down the road, would have passed this arrows that you're now seeing Michael find his way underneath at the hairpin. So a little bit of traffic coming into play now. Michael normally is a stormer through those as the tyres come out, and clearly it's a McLaren pit stop they're expecting, and we don't know which
question,
driver.
is it going to be Mika Häkkinen they bring in which case Michael Schumacher will certainly take the lead, or have they decided that David Coulthard is not doing anything about Eddie Irvine in front of him, and in will come
Häkkinen.
It's Häkkinen. Mika Häkkinen comes in. James Allen, over to you, good and early.
Well, thank you very much, Murray. Well, we thought we knew how much fuel was going to go in. They have, of course, changed it. But nevertheless, 60 kilos is consistent with a two-stop strategy. Wasn't balked there by the Minardi as he came in. And, well, he did it last year. Can he do it this year? I'm looking at the rear tyres. The wear is quite significant here. The groove's more or less gone on these rear Bridgestones. A slight delay at the back, I think. Mika's got it in gear. Not a good stop. Not a good stop at all.
And Michael Schumacher has gone into the lead, and that's 6.8 seconds for Panis, 8.8 seconds for Häkkinen, who's got Luca Badoer in front of him. Mika Häkkinen will make pretty short shrift of the Minardi, but it may hold him up a bit. There's the new race leader.
Yes, that outlap is absolutely critical, just like the in-lap is. It was a poor stop. The McLarens seemed to be up in the air a long time at the front. I couldn't really see why. You could tell Mika was wanting to get away and had to wait a long time for there's Frentzen coming in for his stop from what was 5th position. So Louise.
It's a bit of a flat feeling here at Jordan, I have to say, Martin. They really, really want to finish this season on the podium, particularly at Honda's home Grand Prix. Damon Hill was never going to be a likely contender, but Frentzen's looked strong all weekend. He started from 4th, but he lost those places at the start of the race. He's still in contention, but really this isn't the sizzling performance that Jordan were looking for.
And in comes the Panis comes in again. Now he stopped already. Panis out of the race seemingly, having held 3rd position for so long. The end of the Frenchman's race, is it? This is a very atypical pit stops, very slow indeed, and he's touring out. Olivier Panis' engine not running. We're riding into the pit lane now with Tora Takagi. That ends Olivier Panis' Grand Prix career for Prost. Both the Prosts out inside 20 laps out of 53.
Well, Mika had a very poor pit stop, really. I don't think he really attacked the speed line as Michael does. An 8.8 second stop, and then he had to pass a Minardi on the outlap, so not working at all well there. But he's now getting on with it, setting a new fastest final section as he completes his full flying lap. I noticed his first section was a 62.7, a minute 2.7. That includes the pit stop, or the bulk of the pit stop, so we'll compare that when Michael finally comes in.
But at the present moment, that is the race leader, Michael Schumacher, Ferrari, double world champion, leading, and Eddie Irvine, of course, in the other Ferrari is going strong. And Ralf Schumacher in the pits there, accelerates out. He came in from 5th position.
Yes, and this is falling nicely for Irvine now. Panis out of the way, of course, gives him another position, and Frentzen with apparently no pace whatsoever to come up and play ball and get involved in today's championship decision.
Now, I'm not going to start talking about the World Championship at the moment. It's the wrong time to do it, because we need to wait for all the top 6 to come in and make their stops. Michael Schumacher has not stopped. Eddie Irvine has not stopped. David Coulthard has not stopped. Ralf Schumacher has, Frentzen has, and of course Mika Häkkinen has.
I think they chose to bring Mika in slightly early. I didn't get a chance to say so at the time, but there were 4 or 5 tail enders ahead of him, which Michael's now going through. And on this lap alone, Mika is at 1.3 seconds faster so far, as Michael has now got to wade through that traffic, and you can see the concern on the Ferrari pit wall there. So Mika, yes, Fisichella backed out, moved over. We didn't see it on the screen, but to move, he must have. And now Mika's coming up against the traffic anyway. Damon Hill will move quickly. He knows what it's like to be out there trying to win a world championship,
which he has done here at Suzuka, and he won brilliantly here at Suzuka in 1994. But we're on lap 22 at the present moment as Häkkinen goes absolutely searing past Damon Hill's Jordan, and Mika Häkkinen is 9.5 seconds behind Michael Schumacher on lap 22 out of 53. Eddie Irvine is in third position, so there's a 2-point World Championship gap between them, but the best thing to do is just wait and see when Eddie Irvine comes into the pit lane.
Ferrari mechanics, I can see out of the window, Murray, Ferrari mechanics
There they are.
in the pit lane. So neither of the two cars have been in yet, no idea yet which one of them's coming in first. We'll have to wait and see. We soon know as they come. James down in the pit lane thinks it's Michael Schumacher coming in on this lap. So again, it's a long first out of a two-stop strategy, I would have thought.
As Michael Schumacher comes up to Marc Genet in 14th position in the Minardi, and here are the McLaren mechanics coming out.
Well, we hope that's for Coulthard, otherwise Häkkinen's got some kind of problem. In comes Michael Schumacher, as James correctly predicted, and then we're expecting about 20 seconds later, Coulthard too should be coming in. He's 6/10 behind Irvine at this time. That's a good move from McLaren. They know that they know Ferrari cannot respond by bringing Irvine in at the same time as Coulthard, because Schumacher's in the pit. So I think that's very smart thinking there from the McLaren team.
But Michael Schumacher's time was he's 2 seconds faster than Mika Häkkinen, and he exits the pit lane now. Has he retained the lead? In comes David Coulthard from 4th position for his pit stop.
I can't really see how he did retain the lead. He was only 8 seconds ahead as he went over the line, Murray, and it's obviously a lot longer than 8 seconds to make a stop, and that's a nice stop for Coulthard. That might just get him in front of Eddie Irvine. So I think there's some good thinking here to get, they've got to get that silver car in front of Irvine. And can Coulthard stay in front of Frentzen? Yes, he can. So Frentzen, that must have been a cracking stop for him as well. He's been putting in some 1 minute 42s, and he nearly leapfrogged David Coulthard. Crucial moment for Eddie Irvine. If he doesn't get ahead of Coulthard, he will then be behind Coulthard and Frentzen. Louise.
Yeah, bad news down at Jordan, I'm afraid. Damon Hill has just retired from his final Grand Prix. No ideas why. He just literally turned up in the garage, almost expected. Mechanics are shaking their heads and not knowing why. So he's out of the race. As soon as I find out why, I'll be back and let you know.
I think Damon has probably had enough, actually. All this season, I've felt, to be quite honest, that his heart wasn't really in it. That may be the case. I hope it isn't.
Right, I can see the Ferrari mechanics in the pit lane, and this could be one of the most crucial pit stop of Eddie Irvine's entire motor racing career. He needs a quick one to keep him in front of Coulthard. Otherwise, I believe he'll be behind Frentzen as well. So he needs a good in-lap. He's had no traffic at the moment by the looks of it. A little bit of traffic down the road, but it won't affect him because he will now duck in the pit lane. He's got to attack that pit lane as hard as he dare.
Are you there, James?
Yes, I am. This stop is going to need to be less than 7 seconds. You could talk about 1, maybe 2 seconds. Could decide the Formula 1 World Championship of 1999. It's up to you guys. You time it.
Well, can't do that. We'll just have to rely on the counter on the pit lane. And that's mighty close. No, 7.1 seconds. Well, it's going to be nip and tuck. Remember, there's a speed limit in the pit lane.
Here it is, look, here it is.
There is Coulthard.
Can he do it? That is so close. Yes, he's done it.
David gets past Eddie Irvine, and that may well have settled things for the Irishman. Brilliant bit of tactical thinking by the McLaren team has moved David Coulthard ahead of Eddie Irvine, and he's going to be a mighty difficult man to pass.
Yes, I hope I'm not crediting them with something they didn't do, but it seemed to me that as soon as they knew Schumacher was coming in, they called Coulthard in because they knew that Ferrari couldn't respond with Irvine because Schumacher was, and remember, there's only one pit area, one crew for each team. You can't have them both in at the same time.
Very, very cool bit of thinking, and we're on lap 24 now with Mika Häkkinen 7.5 seconds ahead of Michael Schumacher.
Yes, and Frentzen did a 44.8 on that lap, so my predictions of him also getting ahead of Eddie Irvine failed to be correct because Frentzen had a particularly poor lap for some reason, but Coulthard then holding the line into turn 1, and that is the last thing that Eddie Irvine needed to see, was that silver car flashing through the apex of turn 1.
And the gap is distinctly bigger than it was at that time, and Frentzen in the background is in 5th position. Ralph, Schumacher behind the yellow. Jordan is in 6th place. So, and David Coulthard is now on the fastest lap of the race. He's just done a mighty quick first sector, fastest of all. It looks as though he's got a nice new set of tyres.
Yes, and as you can see, Häkkinen, of course, did regain the lead. He came in, when Michael came in, he was only 8 seconds ahead, so Häkkinen was always going to go back into the lead because it takes a lot longer than 8 seconds to negotiate the pit lane stop and get back up to speed again. Coulthard now a full 38 seconds down the road, but I believe his pace can speed up now if he wants to, but his job now is more slowing Eddie Irvine down and trying to bring Frentzen into play. And for that matter, Ralf Schumacher, who's just a further 0.7 seconds down the road from Heinz-Harald Frentzen.
Lap 25, Häkkinen, Schumacher, Coulthard, Irvine, Frentzen and Ralf Schumacher, with Johnny Herbert, the lead steward, in 7th place ahead of Alesi. Jack Villeneuve is 9th, Rubens Barrichello is 10th. No signs of a BAR being in the points at the end of this race at the present moment to get their first World Championship point, because Ricardo Zonta, the other BAR driver, is down in 13th position. And with Damon Hill's retirement, there are 18 drivers left. 13 drivers left, lap 26, break time.
Starting to apply pressure if he can to Mika Häkkinen, and they've got to use Coulthard just in case Schumacher takes this race. They've got to use David Coulthard to push Irvine down the field.
Yeah, but if Schumacher can close on Häkkinen, remember the Ferrari plan. They ideally want Schumacher to win this race and get 10 points. They ideally want Eddie Irvine to finish 4th or higher. Well, Eddie Irvine is in 4th position, 2 seconds ahead of Heinz-Harald Frentzen, 2 seconds behind David Coulthard. It all depends on Schumacher at the present moment.
They're using, remember in the first stint, Michael Schumacher used his tyres very hard, and he's certainly gone out, and often with fresh tyres like this, you can take too much out of them too early, and you pay the price later on in the stint. James, what can you add?
Well, they're all going to have to stop again, that's for sure. And I guess I'm looking at the calculations now. It's going to have to all be around about the same time. And I reckon that's lap 36 to 38. And that will be a really critical time in this race and, of course, in this championship. It's David Coulthard's target. He's got to hold Irvine up, get to that point, hold him up enough. Schumacher's target too. He's got to get back into this race, get close to Häkkinen and somehow push and try and nick it back again, the lead of the race from Häkkinen in the pit stops. Now, I did a disservice to Häkkinen's mechanics earlier when I said that was a poor stop. It wasn't. He actually put more fuel in than the rest of them because he came in a little earlier as well. 50 kilos of fuel for Häkkinen. I reckon he's going to stop too, around about lap 36 to 38.
Yes, but it could be a nice short stop though, James, if they're running plenty of fuel. And at the moment they're matched up front. They're about 1/10 of a second apart, Häkkinen and Schumacher, as they make their way through. Coulthard now having dropped 3 seconds off the pace, and now just 0.8 of a second ahead of Eddie Irvine. So they're doing exactly as we thought. They're now bringing Coulthard into play to give Irvine a few headaches. It's just the way it has to be done.
Yeah, and Michael Schumacher there has just gone through to lap Ricardo Zonta for the second time. The Brazilian in the BAR well down the field, and the gap between Mika Häkkinen and Michael Schumacher remains at 6.8 seconds, with David Coulthard 36 seconds further back and Eddie Irvine right on his tail. So we need to have a look now at Coulthard and Irvine, 3rd and 4th. They're absolutely together, and Eddie Irvine has got to try to regain that 3rd position from David, or rather get ahead of David Coulthard.
Yeah, you touched on BAR. They're in 9th place with Villeneuve. They desperately need a point today to bring them up in the Constructors' Championship. It's worth millions and millions of pounds to them for the travel money next year if they can get a single World Championship point. And I think all of their men are on a bonus if they can make it happen. But the man who's got to make it happen right now is Jacques Villeneuve, back in 9th place.
Yeah, Minardi have got that 1 point at the present moment. It means something like 15 million pounds. Incidentally, I'm told that at Maranello there are something like 20,000 people in the square and around the town where Ferrari is headquartered. They're not going to be very happy at the present moment. Oh, there is Michael Schumacher in second place. Mika Häkkinen's already gone through the 130R.
Remember, Mika's fallen off the road twice this year while leading in Imola and Monza. But when he was pretty much unpressured, he's not in that situation at the moment. Michael is keeping him more than honest and could well take a 10th or 2 out of him. And on this lap, let's see as it goes over 6.6.
Yes, fastest lap for Schumacher. Michael Schumacher, 1 minute 45.569.
41.5.
And he's closed down the gap. All right, just 0.2 of a second. But the fact is he has closed it down. And they've still got, of course, to make a second pit stop, which I expect to happen round about lap 32 if they were doing something normal. But they may well have taken on a different fuel load, which would mean they could stay out longer.
I think 32's too early, Murray. The back end of Michael Schumacher's car whacking the deck through Dunlop curve. He's obviously running it very low, something he clearly moved to during qualifying. But a lot of traffic on the road there. And that is Coulthard now with Irvine in his mirrors with the two people we were talking about, Frentzen and Ralf Schumacher, easily homing in. The pair of them now are just totally 1.6 seconds behind Eddie Irvine.
Yeah. David Coulthard third, Irvine fourth, Frentzen fifth, Schumacher sixth. There is Schumacher, the four of them together. Going to be very interesting to look at Coulthard's lap time and see if he is closing up deliberately and keeping Eddie Irvine behind him.
Well, what goes around comes around is what Ferrari are going to be thinking at the moment.
Yes.
After, of course, they played this game to rather supreme effect in the last Grand Prix.
Of course, Eddie daren't do anything precipitate. He daren't lunge through. He's leading the World Championship. He can't afford to take any risks. David Coulthard can.
Well, that's right. And, you know, David's not going to have him off the road, but if Eddie goes for a 50-50, David's not exactly going to jump out of the way either. And why should he? And, of course, then Frentzen's not going to take too many prisoners either behind them. So Eddie really doesn't need this headache, but it was absolutely inevitable. We talked about that crucial pit stop. It was inevitable after the outcome of that.
Mika Häkkinen on a potential 76 World Championship winning points compared with Eddie Irvine's potential 73 World Championship losing points. If they stay in first and fourth positions, there is Eddie Irvine.
Now, it's these kind of corners where Coulthard can be slow without any risk of being passed, in those very slow corners where it's one at a time, and then he knows he's always going to be on the throttle a car length earlier than Irvine.
David Coulthard is lapping 3 seconds slower than Mika Häkkinen. Mika Häkkinen's just done around about 1:42. David Coulthard's doing 1:45s, and therefore so is Irvine, so is Frentzen, so is Ralf Schumacher.
And Coulthard's thinking, come on, Frentzen, come on, Schumacher, get on with it. I can't go much slower than this pace. Why aren't you climbing all over the back of that Ferrari that's right behind me?
And meantime, Mika Häkkinen has responded to the challenge very quick, and Michael Schumacher's going fastest again. This race is really now starting to develop. Lap 31, Michael Schumacher's done a fastest first sector for him, fastest second sector of all. There is Coulthard, Irvine, Frentzen and Schumacher. Here is Mika Häkkinen completing the lap. There's Michael Schumacher behind him. The gap was 6.2 seconds. It is 6 seconds. Michael Schumacher has just done the fastest lap of the race.
Yes, we have a curious situation here, really. The two finest drivers in the world, in my view, without question, at this moment in time, are really putting on a supreme display of driving. Häkkinen for his second consecutive title. He'll be the 7th driver in the history of Formula One to win back-to-back titles. And Michael Schumacher driving his heart out, not for himself, driving his heart out for his team's points, and maybe, just maybe, to hand his dream of winning a world title in a Ferrari, driver's title, to Eddie Irvine. So there's a lot of emotions going through Michael's head.
Yeah, but not yet he isn't. It's still 6 seconds, and closing that down as in comes Heinz-Harald Frentzen for his second pit stop. Now, this is the first of the top men to stop for the second time. Frentzen then into the pits. 7.7 seconds. That's him for the rest of the race.
I don't understand that stop, really. They obviously short-filled him in the middle to try and get him, leapfrog him, but it hasn't worked out, and that really is a very early second stop in my view. Really, if you're 18 and 36, I would have thought of the two standard places to stop. Otherwise, you leave yourself a long run to the end, and your tyres are going to be going pretty soggy by that stage.
I wonder what's going through Michael Schumacher's mind now. As you rightly point out, he joined Ferrari to try to bring them their first World Championship. They may still be in for the Constructors' Championship, but look now. Yes,
and now Ralph's got a run at Irvine. Ferrari mechanics are ready, we think, for Eddie Irvine. So will they choose to try to bring Irvine in early while he's being held up so badly by David Coulthard, intentionally by David Coulthard? But it's not working because the two people behind won't come and play.
No, and still Mika Häkkinen and Michael Schumacher 1 minute 41.5. David Coulthard 1:45.0. And here he is, Coulthard.
This is the sort of situation where Coulthard's got to be careful, because if he gets balked in a fast corner like 1:30 up,
Irvine.
Yes, Irvine in. Well spotted, James. So now that's exactly the place where Irvine can get. Coulthard could get caught out. It's not going to happen this time round, as both Ralph and Irvine make a pit stop. James.
What a humongous gamble this is. When he comes out, he's going to come out, I guess, in 10th place with a lot of cars like Villeneuve, Barrichello, Wurz, Lacey in front of him. It's going to be a huge challenge for Eddie Irvine to beat these guys. Obviously, they'll be making pit stops too. But Ross Brawn has obviously thought of something. I'm trying to work it out. Hopefully, I'll be able to figure it out soon. But of course, the other thing Ross has really got to do, the main priority, all of this is nothing if he can't get Schumacher past Häkkinen.
What
he's out again in front of Frentzen, so that's kept Frentzen out of the fray. Frentzen did not manage to leapfrog with that early stop. Eddie Irvine saw the pair of them. We know Damon Hill is out of the race, so it must have been Frentzen coming down the hill. So Irvine keeps his position, and Häkkinen now still moving through the back markers, and Dinnitt's there pointing, go that side, go that side. You have to be very careful when you duck inside like that. You don't end up running wide on the exit, and you can have a pretty silly spin in between turn 1 and 2 there.
And still the gap comes down, 5.5 seconds now between Häkkinen and Schumacher. It may be a bit less than that as a result of Häkkinen having to ease up a tiny bit to get past Diniz, but then Michael Schumacher is going to have to get past the Brazilian in the Sauber too.
Now Coulthard is in no man's land a little bit now. He's a minute off the lead because he's been backing up Irvine. Now I guess he's got to put a spurt on to build the cushion to make his pit stop, to be sure he's got track position again on Eddie Irvine to play games later on. Meanwhile, Mika Häkkinen still very much doing this all for himself, but the gap now is down to just 5.5 seconds.
And Mika Häkkinen driving an absolutely superb race. McLaren doing a fantastic job for him. The car very strong. The Mercedes engine very strong indeed. Into the chicane goes the Ferrari. And out of it now. Let's have a look and see as the times go through here.
So Irvine is 5th then. Eddie Irvine is currently in 5th place. It's Johnny Herbert in 4th, who's only stopped once. And as James predicted, it's going to put Irvine out in the pack, but not too badly as it turns out. Back there in 5th place. Coulthard now having done his fastest lap of the race. As we predicted, he's got to build a 5 or 6 second cushion to come in the pits, I would say, in the next 4 or 5 laps.
And lap 35 out of 53. Mika Häkkinen leading Michael Schumacher by 5.3 seconds. The gap continues to be reduced. As you look at Michael Schumacher, David Coulthard is 3rd, some 55 seconds behind them. Johnny Herbert is in 4th place in the Stewart, 18 seconds behind.
Oh, it's Coulthard's off. Coulthard has gone off.
And lost the nose, lost the wing, lost the nose wing of the McLaren. This is going to blow it for McLaren. Look, he's got to come in and get a new nose cone, and that's going to take at least 15 seconds. I was watching them change nose cones in practice. They were taking about 12 to 15 seconds. Look, they've got it ready already, but he's going to lose time coming off the track. He's going to lose time getting back on the track. And this this means that Johnny Herbert moves up into third place, Eddie Irvine moves up into fourth place, and most importantly, Eddie Irvine has not got that McLaren problem. That's what happened.
That's an amazing place to spin off. I think David just running slightly wide there. I mean, a very, very unusual place to spin off. Hit the wall quite hard. But I think they'll get away with just changing the nose, but that's making, that's put a bit of a bad note on McLaren's Constructors' Championship there. That's really knocked that one for 6.
Yeah, 10 points now for Mika Häkkinen if he wins this race. But anyway, let's watch this. Off comes the old nose cone. They've drilled this to perfection. Or has it jammed? No, it's not. On goes the new one. They're very calm about it.
Yes, but of course he lost a further 10 seconds on the way in as well. So this is a total half-minute loss that's going to absolutely wreck Coulthard's race position. Going to put him back, I would say, at least to 6th or 7th. And no longer can he play the games. And he needs to beat that. He needs to beat that Stewart down into one. I assume that must be Michael Schumacher, the Ferrari, coming down the hill. And there's another shot of, well, that's a very, very unusual place to go off.
And we're on lap 35 now then. Lap 36, my apologies, as you watch David Coulthard on the replay regaining the circuit. I don't know what the problem was, but...
Well, Coulthard can still do a job, look, as luck would turn out for Mika Häkkinen, because he's ended up in front of Michael Schumacher. And Schumacher has yet to make his next stop, and of course David's being lapped, so theoretically he's only got 2 or 3 corners to play games. Otherwise the blue flags will be out, and they're out already. Blue flags wave for car 2. The next thing is, if he goes past too many of them, he will be black flagged.
And Michael Schumacher definitely being held up. He holds the apex, and he's going to lose the place as the... just trying to identify who that is.
Well, that's a lapped car. That'll be the lapped car of Coulthard.
And past he goes. David Coulthard moves over and lets Michael Schumacher through, but he will inevitably have lost time on this, the 36th lap in this Japanese Grand Prix.
Yes, well, that lost him 2.1 seconds in section 1, and we'll see now in section 2 a further 1.5. So it cost Schumacher 3.6 seconds.
Martin, it was Rubens Barrichello, his next year's teammate, that
well, yeah, but Rubens
had the audacity to try and pass him.
Well, Rubens backed out of it in the end, but Rubens, having made 2 stops, is down in 10th place. He was a lap behind, but well,
6.2 seconds was the gap. It's now 9.9 seconds as a result of Michael Schumacher's problems there. It has nearly increased the gap between them by 15%. We're on lap 37. It's still, at the present moment, Mika Häkkinen in the lead, and that means to say that he's on course for the championship. Long way to go. And Michael Schumacher fighting every inch of the way, with Johnny Herbert now in 3rd position. He's only made 1 stop, and it was a very early one, so I'm sure he'll have to come in again, which will let Eddie Irvine up into 3rd position if all goes well for him. And James Allen, news.
Yes, Ferrari getting ready for Michael Schumacher, and I think McLaren are going to bring Mika Häkkinen in too. That's the battle for the lead. But reflect on this, guys. Position 2 and position 3 for Ferrari actually gives them the Constructors' Championship as things stand. I'm sure they fueled David Coulthard through to the finish. I don't think he'll play any more part in Irvine's race. Now, the key question here is Schumacher. If he tries to pass Irvine, to pass Häkkinen, it's because he wants Irvine to be the champion. But of course, if he doesn't really want to be the champion, if he's quite happy just to settle for the Constructors, he won't try to pass Häkkinen. It'll be very interesting to see what happens now.
Yeah, it sure will, James. I mean, I think it is a most, not yours, I know, but I think it's a most uncharitable attitude to say that he's deliberately not going to try hard to prevent his teammate winning the World Championship. Anyway, here he is, it's Michael Schumacher coming in for his 2nd stop. He's all yours.
9.9 seconds he was behind Häkkinen. This is going to have to be quite a short stop. We're looking for something again around about the 7-second mark. No reaction as yet from McLaren, but they're on tenterhooks. All the mechanics here have their visors down. They're ready for a fuel stop any moment now, as 7.5, not too bad, but well, it all really hangs on Häkkinen now. If he doesn't make any mistakes, the McLaren mechanics do a good job. He should be able to go through and win the race.
And they shouldn't do, because the McLaren mechanics are just as well drilled as the Ferrari ones. and they will know that it will all depend on them. They will be super careful. Lap 38 then into the closing stages of this Japanese Grand Prix, with Michael Schumacher having stopped twice. Here is race leader Mika Häkkinen, 10.9 seconds to the good, and looking very good indeed for that very, very rare thing, a back-to-back World Championship, 2 in succession.
Yes, so Häkkinen has got a nice enough cushion, but the kind of pace Michael was putting on, he's going to be putting an awful lot of pressure on Mika in the final stages of this race. McLaren inevitably are responding. They have to. They don't want Michael out there on any hot laps, closing that gap. They know they've got a cushion for a comfortable pit stop. The final scheduled pit stop for the McLaren team in the 99 World Championship. And here comes Häkkinen now. He can afford not to chase those corners too much, make too many mistakes, but he doesn't want to give away more than 1 or 2 seconds of that lead to give himself any kind of comfort zone from a charging Mika Häkkinen, charging Michael Schumacher.
James, are you there?
Indeed, the clock starts, and this is so decisive. All the McLaren mechanics looking fairly relaxed as they put the tyres and the fuel into Mika Häkkinen's car. The big question now is traffic. 7.4, nothing in it on the pit stop. It's just down to traffic. If he comes out in traffic, he'll have a problem.
He's clear. He's got a VAR coming down towards the exit of the pit lane.
So he's got the whole pit straight as a lead, look, because that's Michael Schumacher. There's a Häkkinen in turn 2. Michael Schumacher you saw coming down the pit straight. That's the lead in real terms. And now can Michael Schumacher apply the necessary pressure, catch and indeed pass a flying Mika Häkkinen up there in the lead.
With 14 laps to go and Eddie Irvine in 3rd position, but it's not good enough. If Mika Häkkinen wins this race and Eddie Irvine finishes in 3rd position, Häkkinen would win the World Championship by 2 points. But there's no doubt about the fact that Ferrari at the present moment, with identical points to McLaren in the Constructors' Championship, are online to win that.
Yes, Mika Häkkinen was 1.4 seconds quicker than Michael Schumacher, all told, through that pit stop sequence, including out to the end of the first section. A lot of traffic ahead of Mika, but now they've all done their pit stops, of course. Michael's got to pass the same traffic a little bit later on, but at least it will give Michael a chance to close temporarily as Mika makes his way through these 3 or 4 cars. You're on board with Takagi coming into 130R, and he's fading out to let the Stewart go through on the way in.
Well, incidentally, Heinz-Harald Frentzen is certainly looking good for 3rd place in the Drivers' Championship, with David Coulthard now in 10th position as we go to a break.
Welcome back, as you see a quick shot there of David Coulthard standing in the garage. He's just driven the car in, and Jonesy, it looked like there was a little bit of smoke or haze coming out of the rear end of that car.
Well, he was looking at the back of the car, Daz, which may suggest he was having some gear selection problems, because that's what might have just locked it up momentarily going into that corner. But no matter what it was, it's put him out of the race.
Well, there you go. So David Coulthard, a lousy season for him. He's really had a lot of bad luck, been off the road a lot of times. So he finishes up the McLaren Challenge. That certainly puts paid to the Manufacturers' Championship. Let's go back to Murray for an exciting finish.
Well, I'd like to say, first of all, I'm very disappointed with this weekend as a performance. I really wanted to do as well as I could, but it's just been too difficult, and I have to acknowledge that, you know, that for Formula One for me is a thing of the past, and I think I made the right decision retiring.
Any final brief message for everybody who supported you?
Well, obviously, it would have been fantastic for everyone if I could have got a performance, but I've got lots of other good seasons to look back on, and 1999 won't be one I will look back on fondly, but I'd like to thank everyone for their support during particularly the World Championship campaign and all the other great races that I've been lucky enough to enjoy.
Thanks, Damon. Don't stay away too long.
Well, a sad and dispiriting situation for Damon Hill. As I suspected, he just felt he had had enough in what has been a pretty grisly season for him. And you're watching Michael Schumacher, who is pulling down the gap. It's down from 11.7 seconds to 9.6 seconds with 12 laps to go. But I don't think he can do it. Catching, as I've said in the past, Mika Häkkinen is one thing. Getting past him for those vital 4 extra points is quite another. If he could, Irvine would be great for the World Championship, because he would finish 2 points ahead of Mika Häkkinen. So it all depends on Michael Schumacher, and I don't think he can do it.
Well, as James and I pointed out earlier on, does he really want to do it? But we don't know. I've no idea on that in reality. But he did pull the gap down a couple of seconds, but that was because Mika was negotiating traffic and a lot of it, and he got through quite nicely. And now, of course, in this final 11 laps, Michael has got to do the same, go through exactly the same cars. So, you know, it's a yo-yo effect, and Michael's got to take no prisoners on the way through.
So let me tell you what the top 10 are on lap 43 out of 53. Mika Häkkinen just under 10 seconds ahead of Schumacher. Eddie Irvine is over 60 seconds behind Schumacher in third place. Heinz-Harald Frentzen has guaranteed himself third place in the Drivers' Championship. He's in fourth place, that's provided he finishes, of course. Ralf Schumacher, doing another one of his sensational drives in the Williams, is in fifth place, another point-scoring position for him. Jean Alesi looks as though he's going to finish his career for Sauber in the points. He's in sixth place. Johnny Herbert and Rubens Barrichello disappointing in the Stewarts, 7th and 8th. Jacques Villeneuve doesn't look as though he's going to score a point for the first time for BAR. He's 9th. Wurz is in 10th position. 16 drivers left out of the 22 who started.
There was a period of 6 out of 9 years where Ferrari won the Constructors' World Championship. But the last one of those was back in 1983. So that's their first title for a full 16 years. But now Michael Schumacher is continuing to now fade slightly back from this man Häkkinen as he negotiates those back markers we talked about. And Häkkinen looking unruffled, looking comfortable, not jumping on the throttle, not leaping across the curbs. He's been here before, last year when he had to take the title for himself, and he knows how to do it. Watch out, it's a break.
Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who's guaranteed himself third place in the Drivers' Championship with the retirement of David Coulthard. But right behind him, you can't see him, but Heinz-Harald Frentzen can in his mirrors, Ralf Schumacher, who's really flying in the Williams and is right behind the Jordan that we're riding with. And Jean Alesi is in sixth place ahead of Johnny Herbert, who is beating his Stewart teammate Barrichello, who's driving his last race for the team before it becomes Jaguar and before he goes to Ferrari. 9th is Villeneuve, 10th is Wurz in the Benetton. And that is the Ferrari of Michael Schumacher.
3 German drivers in the top 5, but not in the place they really need to be if Ferrari are going to take both championships this afternoon as Takagi bows out of his home Grand Prix. But Schumacher is not now attacking at all Mika Häkkinen anything like in the middle stint of this Grand Prix. It's now down, I believe, to reliability for Häkkinen. He's now just coasting off into the lead. He needs to make sure he doesn't make a mistake like Imola and Monza, but Häkkinen now, and that's a silly place to park a Formula One car, right on the pit exit. But we're not expecting any pit stops at this moment as we head into the final stages of the race.
I remember Alain Prost at Monaco in 1988 when Senna was a long way ahead of him, thinking I can only pressure Senna in the hope that he makes a mistake, and sure enough Senna did. He went into the Armco just outside the Portier before the tunnel, and Alain Prost won the race. Well, Michael Schumacher needs, I think, to press harder than that. He's actually lapping a few tenths of a second slower than Mika Häkkinen at the present moment, and out of the race there goes Luca Badar from 16th position, leaving 50. Well, Takagi's just gone out, so there are 14 left. Pedro de la Rosa is the last runner. Fisichella is 13th. Zonta is 12th. Deniz is 11th, and Wurz is in 10th place.
Schumacher's given up the chase. Maybe he's also thinking Mika falls off when not under pressure. I've heard them say it at the press conference. I've seen them say it in articles. They think Mika loses his concentration. I don't think he will this afternoon. But Mika, 1.4 seconds faster on that lap. Michael now over 12 seconds behind. So Michael Schumacher has given up the chase.
Well, you saw Tora Takagi there gloomily removing the steering wheel of his arrows for his last race of 1999. Here's a replay of him coasting to a standstill. We're on lap 47 now. Constructors' Championship this year definitely goes to Ferrari. As Martin said, the first time they have done that since 1983. They did it in 1982, and the Drivers' Championship looks as though it is going to elude them yet again. And Michael Schumacher may yet live to see his dream come true of winning the Drivers' Championship for the first time for Ferrari since '79, but he's not going to do it this year unless this man, Mika Häkkinen, strikes trouble in the next few laps.
We ought to say, of course, that that's assuming the Ferrari's crossed the start-finish line. They haven't scored the points yet. But we did ought to add that, having proclaiming them champions. But in any event, they're looking strong and their reliability has been very good. There's oil on the track now. That's why they're all moving. I wonder why they were moving to the middle of the racetrack down the pit straight. I think it was from the blown-up car of Badua. That's Takagi walking back up the pit lane, having parked right on the exit, which would have frightened a few people early on in this race. He's now proceeding up the fast lane and back into the garage.
And I can tell you that Alesi is being given the blue flag now. Jean Alesi in 6th place. I can't see what's happening. I know he's being given the blue flag, but I can only assume that that means that he's got Johnny Herbert in 7th position right up behind him and trying to get past. In which case, mighty good news for Johnny Herbert, because the man who won at the European Grand Prix at the Nürburgring has had a cracking end to his season.
We're looking at a man, really, that should have been world champion about 4 races ago. Had the wheel fly off at Silverstone, fell off the road a couple of times, had a little contretemps with his teammate a couple of times, and one way and another, it's ended up with this showdown in the final race. But I can't help but feeling of all of the people that were up for the championship. There were 4 of them, remember, a couple of races back. Mika most deserved it, although it's been a bit of a patchy season for just about everybody.
Well, it would appear that Michael Schumacher on lap 48 out of 53 has given up. The gap's gone up to 12.1 seconds. Yes, Mika could have had something like 50 more points than he's got now, because he had that throttle problem in Australia, as you rightly say, the dodgy wheel problem at Silverstone, off twice at Imola and Monza, and then he was taken out of the race by a delaminated tyre at Hockenheim. So,
all while leading, of course, you know.
Yes.
Hockenheim while comfortably leading. So, I mean, he won the championship last year with 100 points, I think, if I remember. And he's going to be some 25 points down this year, assuming he gets 24 points down, assuming he gets to the end of this motor race.
Yeah, your memory's a good one, Martin. He's going to get 76 points here, which is 24 less than he got last year. But I remember Keke Rosberg won the World Championship in 1982 with just 1 victory, and that was the Swiss Grand Prix, which paradoxically was held at Dijon in France. And this is going to be, if he finishes the race, Mika Häkkinen's 5th victory. He won in Brazil, he won in Spain, he won in Canada, he won in Hungary. He's had a couple of 2nd places, he's had 3 3rd places. In fact, it's only not finishing that stopped him being in the points, if you follow me.
Often happens like that, Murray. But as I said before, if he finishes with his 7th time in history. Fangio won 4 on the trot, and there are 5 other drivers so far that have won 2 championships on the bounce. But Mika Häkkinen had 2 seasons now of a lot of very intense pressure, and I think we saw on the podium in Malaysia that pressure coming out. He was absolutely destroyed at the end of that race, I think more mentally than physically. But I suspect he'll have a happier face on today if he can complete his last 4 and a little bit laps with no problem.
Michael Schumacher on his return to Formula One, won in Malaysia. Looks as though he's going to be 2nd in Japan. He's coming up behind Pedro de la Rosa's arrows. His teammate de la Rosa's Takagi has already retired. De la Rosa's been lapped twice by Häkkinen. He's about to be lapped for the 2nd time by Michael Schumacher. Mika Häkkinen is on lap 50 out of 53.
And Michael just popped in a 142.5, which sort of suggests he's not going quite as fast as he could if he really, really wanted to. I think if it was Michael Michael Schumacher's, I think if it was, that's a blown-up car, that's in front of Eddie Irvine. Let's have a look and see what it is. It'll be interesting to see what it is when we come across it. There was an arrows going slowly, we saw earlier in the picture, homing on that, and that is a Benetton blowing up. So none of the contenders. Fisichella was back down in 13th place. Last but one. He's been off the road a few times this afternoon. Probably got side pods full of gravel and rubbish and overheated the thing finally. But I believe if it was Michael Schumacher's World Championship up for grabs, he'd be lapping somewhat faster than he is right now.
You could well be right. Fisichella's 7th retirement of the year, and I think he'll be glad to be out of the race. He's been a very glum man here in Japan the whole time, as has his teammate Alex Wurz, because they just could not get the Benetton to grip the road properly. And if you can't get grip in Formula One, you have got a major problem. Here's a man who hasn't. Mika Häkkinen coming through to complete his 50th lap. Just laps 51, 52, 53 to go. A comfortable cushion of over 11 seconds between him and Michael Schumacher at the end of the previous lap. We'll know very shortly whether that cushion is a bigger one, a bigger and more comfortable cushion, or a smaller and slightly less comfortable cushion. But either way, they'll have plenty of padding in them. It's a smaller one. Michael Schumacher's got it down to 10.2 seconds, but no way even Schumacher is going to catch and pass Mika Häkkinen, assuming the Finn finishes this race with just 3 laps to go. Irvine 3rd, Frentzen 4th, Ralf Schumacher 5th, the brothers in the top 5, Shauna Lacey 6th, and still the 2 stewards, Johnny Herbert ahead of Barrichello, 7th and 8th.
James Allen has turned journalist and is asking me on our intercom here, do I think it's bad form of Michael Schumacher not to want Eddie to win that championship, if indeed that is the case? And I have to say, it looks like that to me. I said earlier in the programme, I think he'd be extremely happy if the pressure goes and that the Ferrari win the Constructors' title. It takes some pressure away from Ferrari. Then he would want to win his dream, the Drivers' title, next year. Eddie hasn't been that complimentary about Michael, particularly just after he went in the wall in Silverstone. And I know Michael was angry with Eddie because he felt he should have let him through on the way down to Stowe on that fateful lap when he broke his leg. Eddie went on to say that maybe it's the best thing that happened to Ferrari for Michael to be out of it so they could run a 2-car team instead of a 1-car team. There was a lot of things went on, and I don't think Michael Schumacher will be at all disappointed if the result stays right as it is now. What do you think, Ryan?
Evil thoughts, gentlemen.
Not evil.
In my naive way, I think you're both being very uncharitable, but maybe you're right. Who knows? We're on lap 52 now. Anyway, that's the important thing. And a downcast Jean Todt looks at his monitor. Yes, he can be downcast because it looks as though Ferrari are not going to win the Drivers' Championship. But if they've won the Constructors' Championship, it's a very good move.
I remember seeing Jean Todt just after the race in Malaysia on our TV screens, looking a happy man, a 1, 2, and all of that sort of thing. Then he went through the turmoil of being thrown out of the race, the appeal, and he offered to resign, of course, just after that. He's the boss, day-to-day boss, effectively, and he offered to resign, and they chose not to accept it. So Todt's had a pretty choppy ride this last few weeks, and I think he'll be moderately satisfied with this afternoon.
Well, Mika Häkkinen for McLaren is deservedly about to join some of the truly great drivers as a back-to-back 2 times world champion, and he's waited for it a long time. He joined McLaren from Lotus in 1993, having driven for Lotus for a couple of years when it was very much in the doldrums. His teammate, incidentally, Johnny Herbert. There is Michael Schumacher. He's got the gap down to under 10 seconds now. But then Mika Häkkinen joined for McLaren and sensationally went faster than Ayrton Senna in qualifying for the Portuguese Grand Prix that year. He had that terrible crash at Adelaide when he was nigh unto death for a very long time. Recovered absolutely magnificently, and the imperturbable Finn is now on his last lap. And in the background you see Michael Schumacher. That's how close the finish is going to be. Michael Schumacher has pulled the bung out now. It's 7 seconds, down from 10 to 7.
Why is Mika going quite that slow? He lost a full 3 seconds on that line. Now with 7 of them.
The McLaren seem to be quite happy.
They
there
seem
they are,
comfortable enough.
out of the garage, onto the pit lane to greet their man home for this historic victory, the last Grand Prix of the millennium. And Mika Häkkinen now is coming up towards the crossover underneath the bridge.
You have to be so careful backing off like that. Your tyres soon lose 10 or 15 degrees if you're not really on it, and your brakes lose 100, 115 degrees. So don't go too there's traffic ahead. Don't take it too close.
Oh, look, you can't see. We will have been able to look over his shoulder as he came out of the hairpin and look across and see that Michael Schumacher, in terms of track distance, is far enough behind the McLaren not to be able to do anything about it, I believe, notwithstanding the fact that Mika Häkkinen is closing up on a couple of tail-enders. I don't think he'll reach them before the end of the lap, because he is coming up to the 1:30R, and there's Ron Dennis waiting to greet his man home, and he's going to be truly ecstatic, as rightly so. Everybody in the McLaren team is going to be, because here is the flying Finn. Mika Häkkinen wins the Japanese Grand Prix of 1999 if he rolls out of the chicane very slowly indeed, making absolutely sure, and takes the checkered flag. Mika Häkkinen wins in Japan. He is world champion. And there is Michael Schumacher, and the gap between them had come down to just 5 seconds. Mika was indeed taking it easy, and Mika joyfully waved both hands out of the cockpit. There's a lot of Finns here with their faces painted blue and white. They're already wearing T-shirts saying Mika Häkkinen, world champion, 1998 and 99. I said to one of them just before I came into the commentary box, "You're being a bit optimistic, aren't you?" And he said, no, we trust our man. He will win. Well, the trust was justified. And Mika Häkkinen beats Eddie Irvine in the Drivers' Championship by 2 points. Eddie Irvine started 4 ahead. He finishes 2 behind. He's second in the World Championship, ahead of Heinz-Harald Frentzen, and that's the highest a Jordan driver has ever finished in the World Championship. David Coulthard takes 4th place in the championship, and not having finished the race. Michael Schumacher 5th and Ralf Schumacher 6th in the championship. And in the Japanese Grand Prix, as you look at a very, very happy Mika Häkkinen, the point scorers at the end of this momentous race were Mika Häkkinen the winner, Michael Schumacher 2nd, Eddie Irvine 3rd, and that gives Ferrari the Constructors' Championship. Heinz-Harald Frentzen 4th for Jordan, Ralf Schumacher 5th for Williams, and Alesi 6th. Yeah, there's Irvine.
Irvine over the line. He's going to be feeling pretty sad, pretty sick about that. If you're wondering why Ferrari didn't shuffle them around to put him on equal points with Häkkinen, it wouldn't have made any difference, because Mika still would have taken it on the number of wins.
So Japan is won by Häkkinen, with Schumacher 2nd, Eddie Irvine 3rd, Frentzen 4th, Ralf Schumacher 5th, John Alesi 6th, and we go to a break.
Another car at the Parc Fermé Suzuka. Listen to that crowd go up. Back-to-back championships, it makes him pretty special, AJ.
I think it's great. To be honest with you, Daz, it's the result I wanted. I wanted Ferrari to win the Constructors' Championship because, I mean, they're great for the sport and they're colourful, and they've done a great job to become more and more competitive, and they certainly missed Schumacher. That was no doubt about that. But I wanted Häkkinen to win the Drivers' Champion. Simply is the better driver. There's no doubt about it.
Good moment there, Eddie Irvine coming over to Mika Häkkinen, Ron Dennis standing in the background. Dennis, of course, very close to this boy, isn't he? I mean, they've been a close team and a close pair of friends for a long time.
Well, 6 or 7 years now he's been with the team, and they've got a great working relationship, and